Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. Jaya Radha Gokula Nanda, Radha Gokula Nanda, Radha Gokula Nanda, Shri Radhe. Jaya Radha Gokula Nanda, Radha Gokula Nanda. Jayo Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman, Jayo Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman. Jaya Gauranitai, Jaya Gauranitai, Jaya Gauranitai, Jaya Gauranitai, Jaya Gauranitai, Jaya. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Hare Krishna, welcome everyone to this evening's Gita class. So we'll just recite an invocation mantra and call and response, so you can repeat after me. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we are reading from the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 8, which is titled Attaining the Supreme, text 23. So I'll read the Sanskrit and you can repeat after me if you feel comfortable, and I think it's going to come up on the screen. So I'll recite one line and you can repeat. Yatra kale tvanavrittim avrittim chaiva yoginaha prayata yanti tam kalam vakshyami bharatarshava. Yatra kale tvanavrittim avrittim chaiva yoginaha prayata yanti tam kalam vakshyami bharatarshava. Yatra kale tvanavrittim avrittim chaiva yoginaha prayata yanti tam kalam vakshyami bharatarshava. Would anyone like to recite? Yatra kale tvanavrittim avrittim chaiva yoginaha prayata yanti tam kalam vakshyami bharatarshava. Anyone else would like to try? Yes. Oh, this is in Sanskrit, but in yeah, I don't think they have it in Hindi. At the top, you can scroll up. No, he wants the Hindi. If you can go up. Yeah. Yatra kale tvanavrittim avrittim chaiva yoginaha prayata yanti tam kalam vakshyami bharatarshava. Anyone else? No? Okay. So I'll do word for word, and you can repeat after me. Yatra, at which. Kale, time. Tu, and. Anavritim, no return. Avritim, return. Ja, also. Eva, certainly. Yoginaha, different kinds of mystics. Prayataha, having departed. Yanti, attain. Tam, that. Kalam, time. Vakshyami, I shall describe. Bharata Rishabha, O best of the Bharatas. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. O best of the Bharatas, I shall now explain to you different times at which, passing away from this world, the yogi does or does not come back. Purport. The unalloyed devotees of the Supreme Lord, who are totally surrendered souls, do not care when they leave their bodies or by what method. They leave everything in Krishna's hands and so easily and happily return to Godhead. But those who are not unalloyed devotees and who depend instead on such methods of spiritual realization as Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Hatha Yoga must leave the body at a suitable time in order to be sure of whether or not they will return to the world of birth and death. If the yogi is perfect, he can select the time and situation for leaving this material world. But if he is not so expert, his success depends on his accidentally passing away at a certain suitable time. The suitable times at which one passes away and does not come back are explained by the Lord in the next verse. According to Acharya Baladev Vidyabhushan, the Sanskrit word kala, used herein refers to the presiding deity of time. So we'll just chant a short prayer to invoke the blessings of our teachers and acharyas. So if you know, you can follow along. Om Gyan Timirandhasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshuran Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sate Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Welcome everyone to today's Bhagavad Gita class. How many of you have come to a Bhagavad Gita class before here at the temple? First time? Wow, okay. No pressure then. So, how many of you have read the Gita? Couple of people heard of the Gita at least? Yeah, cool. So, as you know, it's a conversation, right, between Krishna and Arjun. In the middle of a battlefield, the Battle of Kurukshetra, and it's just about to start. And before that, Arjun tells Krishna, wait, please take me to the middle, and I just want to see, who's there, because obviously it's a family fratricidal war, right? It's between two sides of a single family, so he's really, really overwhelmed. And that's where this 45-minute conversation takes place, and that's what the Bhagavad Gita is. So today we're reading from chapter 8, verse 23. Before we go into it, I have a couple of questions for you all. So imagine I gave you £525,600, so it's just over £500,000 every year of your life. How would you spend it? Anyone can shout out. Go on, guys, how would you spend it? £500,000 roughly, every year. Some charitable works, yeah, okay, very, very noble. Anyone else? Buy a property, yeah, invest for the future, growth. Another question, well, this is a bit of a riddle. What's the one thing that we all have, that we're born with, and we've got complete free will over its use? Time. Anyone else? Body. Do we have complete free will over the body? We can use it however we want, that's true. But it does limit us in some ways, doesn't it? Yeah? Okay, well, hold those thoughts, we'll come back to it. So, back to the Gita. To summarize, you can consider the Bhagavad Gita like a sandwich. It's 18 chapters. The first 6 are described to be karma yoga. The middle 6 chapters are bhakti yoga. And the latter 6 chapters are jnana yoga. So we're chapter 8 today. That's the middle. So the filling, the juiciness, the real deal, that's what we're dealing with today. And to recap what's happened in this chapter, because we're on verse 23. So in the first two verses, Arjun actually asks some questions to Krishna. So Arjun says, "O my Lord, O Supreme Person, what is Brahman? What is the self? What are fruitive activities? What is this material manifestation? And what are the demigods? Please explain this to me. Who is the Lord of sacrifice, and how does he live in the body, O Madhusudan? And how can those engaged in devotional service know you at the time of death?" So that's in the first two verses of this chapter. And then in the remainder of the chapter, Krishna answers these questions. And this specific verse is looking to answer that last question where he says, how can those engaged in devotional service know you at the time of death? Because this verse is dealing with that. So, generally, no one really wants to die, right? No matter who we are, what our situation is, we don't want to die, do we? Why do you think that is? Fear, because we think that's the end of us, yeah. We live our lives as if we're going to be living here forever. And that's because in chapter 2 of the Gita, actually, it explains who we actually really are. So we're actually spirit souls, right? And the nature of the soul is Sat Chit Ananda, right? Sat Chit Ananda. So we're eternal, we're full of bliss, and we're full of knowledge, right? So that eternal part of us is there, And that's why, even though we're in this body, we still have that desire to live eternally. And that's why we don't want to die. So everyone is trying to live here as long as possible and to maximize on their enjoyment, right, in this world. But if we really analyze and look, we'll realize that the enjoyment that we're trying to get here, it doesn't really satisfy us fully. And even if it's there, it's fleeting, like it'll just be temporary. And we may even get some enjoyment, right? But eventually, because it doesn't fully satisfy us, it's not always there with us. All it does is it leaves us with the desire to want more enjoyment, because we just don't experience it fully. And as I was saying in chapter 2, verse 13, Krishna says, as the embodied soul continuously passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. A sober person is not bewildered by such a change. So Krishna is saying that, just as we grow up from being a child to, becoming elderly, similarly, at the time of death, all we're doing, by we I mean our real selves, the soul, is we're just changing bodies. And that's a fact. And so it's a fact that, the body is going to die. And in this verse, it talks about what happens after death. What's the destination after death? So what do you think actually determines what happens to us after death? Karma? Can you explain a bit more?
Your actions, you have a good bag and a bad bag, and all your good things or deeds that you do will lead to heaven, or and all the bad things that you do will go to hell.
Okay, so this gentleman claims we have a good bag and a bad bag depending on our actions, and whichever one's heavier, is that what's going to determine if we go to heaven or hell? Is that what you're saying? Okay, so we need to collect lots of goods in the good bag, right? Okay, anyone else? What determines what happens to us after death? What determines what happens to us after death?
What determines how we live the life and how our past lives have been lived.
Yeah, so our current life and our past life, how we've lived them. Okay. Yeah. So scripture actually tells us there's 3 factors that play a role in determining what happens. So one is our karma, which is also linked to what you're saying, our activities, because there's reactions. The second is our desires. What is it that we desire? And thirdly is thoughts. And all of them are actually linked, so we'll talk about them. So karma, as we said, refers to action and reaction, right? So we know for any action that we perform, there's going to be a reaction, whether it's good or bad. right? Whether we are going to enjoy the fruits of our actions because we did something good, or whether we're going to suffer, because we perform some negative acts. Because we perform activities, we are going to have to experience either the joy or the suffering that results from our activities. And so things just have to play out in our life, right? But it's not necessarily true, as she was saying, that things will play out in the same lifetime. Because the Gita also talks about, it's not just this life, So we may experience things from a previous lifetime, and we might not be able to rationalize why things are happening to us. And activities we perform in this life, the reactions of it we may get in a future lifetime. Karma is very, very complicated, so we're not going to go into it today, but just to give you a little bit of flavor. So one might think then, why should we perform activities if we're just going to be accruing, good karma, bad karma? But it's linked to our desire, right? We perform activities because we want something. Why do we go to school? Because we want to study, right? Why? To get a good qualification so that eventually we can get a good job, right? Why do we work? Well, we want to earn money so that we can, maintain ourselves, and then, over and above that, maybe some comfort, some luxuries, either for ourselves or extending that beyond to our family and friends. So our activities are driven by our desires, Now, imagine you're at the last stage of your life. What might be going through your mind? Shri Shri Vara Gokulananda ki jai, Shri Shri Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman ki jai, Shri Shri Gauranitai ki jai. If you're at the last stage of your life, what might be going through your mind at that point?
Whatever we have habituated with.
Whatever.
Habituated with certain thoughts like worry about your family and things like that. If you're habituated with thinking about Krishna, then that will be in your mind always. So similarly, whatever you have conditioned mind, that will be going on in your mind.
So whatever we've conditioned our mind to think about, and our habit. Yeah. Nice. Anyone else? Yeah? How you've lived your life, yeah. What, can you explain why that is?
Since you're towards the end, it's like reflecting if you've had a good or bad life.
Yeah. You're in that reflective mood, right? So when in the Gita, Krishna in chapter 6 actually tells Arjuna that the mind is restless, it's turbulent, obstinate, and very strong. And Arjun actually says, "Oh Krishna, to subdue it, I think is more difficult than controlling the wind." Has anyone tried to control the wind before? Do you think it can be done? It'd be very, very hard if it was possible. But here, Arjun's saying, I think it's even harder to control the mind than it is to control the wind. So, to be able to completely control and dictate what our thoughts are, even right now when, we're kind of sane and, things are okay, it's quite hard, it's impossible. And so to a great extent, at any given time, we can't really do it. And so, whatever our mind is filled with, is actually driven by our desires, what we've been exposed to, Whatever we're exposed to does influence heavily on our desires. And the time of death is very, very difficult for most people. If people don't pass away like instantly for, whatever reason, have a peaceful death, most people will go through some bodily and mental troubles before reaching that stage. And so, the mind is really playing up. It's our thoughts at the time of death. It's very difficult for us to control them. We're in a lot of pain, probably bodily wise and mentally as well. And so actually, as you were saying, it's like our life flashes before our eyes, right? Our thoughts are probably comprised of our desires that we've accumulated throughout our life, our aspirations, our hopes, our fears. And so whatever's most important to us, whatever we value the most, that's what's going to surface in our consciousness. And so, all of these things are linked to our desires, the people who are close to us and dear to us, and ultimately the activities that we've done throughout our lives. So if it's really, really important, that all of these things are driving what our future is going to be beyond this lifetime, isn't it really important that we just reflect and consider our life and what we're actually doing right now? Our scriptures actually tell us that this world is a very, very dangerous place. Padam padam yadvi padam. At every step there is danger. And it's a very uncertain place as well. Like, no one really knows what their lifespan is, how long they're going to live, right? Very, very temporary, our life. A lot of people actually die very young. I'm sure you've come across people, right? Even babies, like just who are born, newborns, they die, right? People who are fit and healthy, like they had nothing wrong with them, and all of a sudden they die. So we don't even know when that final moment's going to be for us, right? Srila Prabhupada said, Parikshit Maharaj, have you heard of the Srimad Bhagavatam? It's a conversation, multiple conversations in it, but it's a 7-day narration. And Shukadev Goswami is narrating to Parikshit Maharaj, who only had 7 days to live. He knew that, though, because he was cursed. And Prabhupada said that he at least knew he had 7 days. We don't even know if we have 7 seconds to live from now, you know? Very, very uncertain. Here's some food for thought. So suppose you're working on a project and there's a deadline, right? So we're up against the clock, and imagine that you continue to work away, but the clock stops, but you don't know that, right? And so you're probably under that illusion that, oh, I've got a lot of time left, and you're still working on your project. When eventually you realize that the clock had stopped and you've missed the deadline, you realize like you were in illusion, right? And time hadn't actually stopped. You didn't have as much time as you thought. So actually, we're in a very similar position. How many of us actually live every single moment with that understanding that eventually we are going to have to give up this body someday? Most of us don't. Sometimes we're aware, you know, but most of the time we're not even aware. We just continue on. Yamaraj, who's considered the god of death, when he asked Yudhishthira, who's Arjun's eldest brother, he said, what's the most amazing thing in the world? And Yudhishthira replied that every single day, living beings around me are dying, but I think I'm going to be staying here forever. How amazing is that? You know, like we can see it around us, and yet we think we're immune from it. Suppose we get like a huge inheritance, right, from our family, but there's a condition. There's an expiry date on it, right? If we use the money, it's going to naturally decrease over time. But if we invest it somewhere, it'll go somewhere else, but the condition still holds, right? And so eventually it will expire and we'll lose it. But if there was something we could do to make that wealth ours forever, so reverse that condition, wouldn't we jump at the opportunity to do that? We probably would, right? And I asked before, in the beginning, you know, what is it that we all have and we can choose how to spend it? And someone said time. That's correct. You know, we get this treasure of time at the time when we're born in this world. Everyone gets it. And that £500,000 I was talking about, you know, when I said, if I gave you £500,000 every year, what would you do with it? That's actually the number of minutes in a year. 525,600. So our time is finite. And with each passing day, each passing moment, this wealth of ours is depleting. And no matter how much money you throw, you're never going to get even a single second back, right? Time is passing. So how valuable is time? So valuable. And so we can use our time in so many different ways, you know, whether it's most of the time we're using the time to pursue our desires, you know, whether it's to be successful, whether it's, you know, to earn more money, to earn respect, fame, etc. So we're just caught in pursuing these worldly pleasures. And we don't even think that we're actually running out of time. But ultimately, even if we achieve all these things in our life, at the time of death, we're going to have to give that up, you know? But does that mean that we shouldn't act? Not really. So here's a story from the Mahabharata. Vidura and Dhritarashtra. You've heard of those personalities? So Dhritarashtra was the father of the Kauravas who the Pandavas were fighting in the war. And Vidura is his brother. So he tells this story. Vidura tells this story to Dhritarashtra. that there's a man in a forest, a dark forest, and he's getting chased by a tiger. So he's running for his life, and he jumps on a tree to try and escape. He climbs up and he makes it to the top, and he's holding on to a branch. He looks down, and there's some snakes at the bottom, right? He looks to his left, and there's an elephant there. He looks up, and on the branch that he's holding on to, there's 2 rats, a black one and a white one. And then even above that, there's a bee's nest. So if he falls down, he'll get eaten by the snakes. If he tries to jump and move slightly to the side, he'll probably get trampled by the elephant, right? If he stays as he is, well, the rats are chewing on the branch, so eventually the branch is going to fall. But there's also, because there's a bee's nest at the top, there's some honey dripping down, and he's actually eating that honey. And he's tasting it, and he's thinking, wow, this is amazing. So he's in this really weird situation, but so much kind of uncertainty and suffering around him. His life is in danger, but he's thinking, oh, this honey is so sweet, you know? So all of these things in this story represent something. So the snakes actually represent time. Time consumes and destroys everything. The rats, the black and white rats, they represent day and night, right? Because that's just going, that's ticking, time is ticking. In the Bhagavatam, it's explained that with the rising and setting of the sun, which is day and night, one should understand that one's duration of life is actually being taken away. And so that branch is eventually going to crack one day. The elephant, which is standing on the left, has got its trunk wrapped around the tree. And at any moment, could just uproot the tree, right? An elephant's really strong. And that elephant represents the uncertainty of death, right? Like I said before, no one knows when they're going to die, right? And so it's very, very uncertain. Anything can happen at any moment. Our life can be uprooted at any moment. It's so uncertain. And the bees, that might be stinging him, they represent the constant stinging of the miserable situations that we face in this world. So, people, unkind words, unpleasant exchanges that we might have, or unfortunate incidents, bad things that happen to us, whether it's through nature or, other situations. So we're always being stung by different miseries. And in the middle of it all, there's these drops of honey. These few drops of happiness. We experience some happiness, right? Like life isn't completely miserable. And so this guy is just thinking, oh, what's the problem? I've got something here, like some drops of honey. I've got some happiness. Everything's fine, But anyone who looks at this outside in is probably thinking, this is absolutely ridiculous. Like, what's going on? And why is he not trying to get out of here? And so a wise person will recognize they need to get out of this situation. So we have to act. We can't stop acting, but time is ticking, right? Time is passing. So how can we best invest and utilize our time? We want to attain something more substantial, something lasting beyond this life, right? And if we truly reflect on our lives, we'll find that possessions aren't really making us happy. Satisfying our senses isn't really making us happy. And it's because we're not really properly utilizing our time. Suppose you have a pet parrot, yeah? Now, to look after it, you'll probably buy it a cage, right? And it will probably live in that cage. You might let it out occasionally. But you want to decorate it inside, you'll polish the cage now and then. But you don't feed the parrot. You just look after the cage, right? What's going to happen to the parrot? Eventually, obviously it's going to be sad and hungry, and eventually it's probably not going to survive. So that's kind of like our situation for most of us, We're like that parrot. We're doing so much to maintain this body, keep it comfortable, try and, aim for more opulences externally. And that's like the kind of cleaning of the cage, decorating the cage. But are we really feeding the parrot? Are we really nourishing our soul, like the real us? Most of us aren't, In one of the Puranas, one of our scriptures, the Padma Purana, it actually states that there's 8.4 million species of life. Yeah? I'll just do a breakdown of it. So there's 3 million types of animals, 2 million types of trees, 1.1 million types of insects, 1 million types of birds, 900,000 aquatics, and 400,000 types of human bodies. So the human form of life is actually very rare. That 400,000 is less than 5% of the 8.4 million species, right? But it's the most valuable form of life. Why? Because compared to all of the other species, humans have developed consciousness and also a degree of independence. But with that, we also have more responsibility, because we talked about karma. So when we perform activities, we get reactions. But the other species who have lower consciousness, they won't get reactions. So for example, like a tiger, right? Its bodily constitution is it has to eat another animal to survive, right? And that's just nature's arrangement. So it's not going to incur any sinful reaction because that's just the arrangement. But we have more freedom to choose our activities. And we've got to develop consciousness. And that means we have to go beyond the basics of just sleeping, eating, mating, and defending. And we have to inquire deeply about life and its purpose. And it's this questioning that should take the front seat in our lives, because we're going to do the kind of normal, basic bodily maintenance anyways, right? But that should be secondary. That's going to happen anyways. But the real purpose of human life is to make a solution to this repeated birth and death cycle that we're in. And if we lose this human form, we don't know after how many thousands or millions of years we're going to have to suffer through different bodies before we actually get this human birth again, right? So it's very, very valuable. And if we can understand this, that, we're actually spirit souls, and we're just encaged in this body, but there's an eternal reality, then we can start to link this reality to our thoughts, our desires, our actions, and, When we're at school, we experienced good teachers, bad teachers, interesting subjects, boring subjects. And when a student isn't interested in a very, very important subject, a good teacher will do whatever is necessary to pique that student's interest because they know it's important, right? And so Krishna, the ultimate teacher, he comes in the form of time as well. He tells us in the Gita that he is actually time. And this form is meant to carry out this purpose of teaching us what is important in life. The Bhagavad Gita, how many people in this world have actually heard of the Bhagavad Gita? Out of them, how many have actually read the Bhagavad Gita? And how many of them, actually live by it? Very, very few, And so to trigger our interest, he's here in the form of time, showing us how everything's deteriorating and eventually will be lost. That everything material is ultimately futile. And so let's not place all of our energy, all of our effort, all of our hopes and aspirations solely on the things of this material world. So what does that mean for us, like on a practical level, right? We need to utilize our time in this human body in the best possible way. So there's two things. So one is transforming our day-to-day activities. So in the Bhagavad Gita later on, it talks about the modes of material nature, goodness, passion, and ignorance. And if we want to utilize our time properly, we want to see, the activities that we're performing, what modes are we performing them in? So the lowest mode is ignorance, and that's like characterized by sleep, oversleeping, laziness, procrastination, being dirty, miserable. The mode of passion is higher than that, and it's characterized by greed, anger, this intense endeavor for things, really fast-paced life. And then you have even higher than that is the mode of goodness, which is, things that bring you joy. There's wisdom, selflessness. It has a calming effect, and it brings out our good qualities. So we want to strive more towards the more of goodness, because ultimately then we can transcend it and operate on a spiritual level, because we can't just jump from the lower modes up to the spiritual level. So we want to dovetail our activities now, not dovetail, more uplift our consciousness in all of our activities. So just as a simple example, our house environment, in the mode of ignorance, it will be dirty, our house will be dirty, unorganized, and hardly we will spend time cleaning it. In the mode of passion, things are just noisy, cluttered, really fast-paced. Everyone's constantly running around. In the mode of goodness, things are clean, things are organized, and there's a good schedule, just as an example of the modes in practice. So we can take this away, analyze different aspects of our day-to-day life and see how we can make changes. And I said there's two parts to it, right? So there's our day-to-day activities, but on top of that, we have to add something as well. We need to engage in bhakti yoga, spiritual practice. So we know time's precious, we don't want to waste it, and we want to make some endeavor to uplift our consciousness towards the mode of goodness, but also engage in spiritual activities to inquire about the deeper things in life. But life's not easy. We're faced with many, many challenges, whether we follow a spiritual path or not, everyone goes through challenges. A lot of things we can't control, the external challenges. But one of the biggest challenges we do have is actually internal, and that's our mind. And that's something that is, to some degree, in our control and influence. And in the Gita, in chapter 6, Krishna says, the mind can be our best friend or our worst enemy. How many times have we experienced our mind wandering when actually we just need it to focus? I remember when I was in school and university, and you got to study for long periods of time, when you're revising for exams. And at certain points, like you get tired, and then the mind convinces you, take a break, have a nap, go to take a snack, or go on social media for a little while just to take a break, There's plenty of time, And that's just a small example, right? But if we reflect on our lives, how many times have we thought about cultivating a good habit? But actually our mind put us off, Maybe it was just one day, but then that day turned into a week. Then that week turned into a month. That month turned into a year. That year turned into several decades. I'm sure there are examples like that where we look back and we're like, I wish I'd done that before. I wish I'd cultivated that good habit, good quality before. So if we keep listening to the mind, we'll keep delaying things for this lifetime and several lifetimes. And so we need to get out of this perpetual procrastination. And that's actually in the mode of ignorance. And we need to reject the mind's demands and whims, even if that's baby steps, we don't have to, it's not that we have to learn to control the mind fully now, but take baby steps towards it. Because it's not just about fully being able to do that, but it's slowly, how much resistance can we build up against the mind, which is trying to divert us. And one thing that really helps us to overcome the distractions and whims of the mind is having purpose. How many of us are actually just going through life? Are we conscientiously working towards goals, and that too goals which are actually going to spiritually uplift us, spiritually, but also mentally, physically, emotionally? We want to grow through life. We don't want to just go through life. And so we talked about, for example, sleep. We talked about the house environment and how we can, transform that from different modes. But there are things you can do even in your other activities, when it comes to food, when it comes to sleep, when it comes to discussions. What are you talking about with people? How are you interacting with them? All of these things can be transformed into the mode of goodness. But if we only just are concerned with the process and we don't know why we're doing something, we don't have purpose and a goal, eventually our resolve is going to weaken. And so if we want to perfect our death, we need to have that purpose, right? That purpose is we want to remember Krishna at the time of death, as this verse is telling us. In the Puranas, it says, Smartavya satatam Vishnu, Vishmartavyo najatu chit. The Padma Puran tells us that our goal should be to always remember Krishna and never forget him. That's it. That's the primary thing that we need to focus on. Everything else should be supporting that. And so we need to live our life in such a way that that becomes our primary goal. We want to practice bhakti yoga so that remembering Krishna is natural for us every single day, and even when we leave this world. And there's so many things that we can do, What does spiritual activity mean? What does spiritual practice mean? For some of us, we don't actually know what that means, and there's this misconception. But actually, there's a lot of variety when it comes to spiritual practice, Today, we're here discussing the Bhagavad Gita, so we can take part in discussions like this. or take courses, like we have the School of Bhakti here, if you've not heard of before, many courses on many different topics. So let's educate ourselves. We can do worship at home. We can offer whatever we have to Krishna before we actually enjoy it, For example, food. We can offer food to Krishna as an expression of gratitude before we take it. So many things we can do. We can engage our skills and talents in the service, We can volunteer at the temple, for example, or different projects which are trying to spread spirituality and make people more conscious and aware. And ultimately, actually, the scriptures say in this age, even though Kali Yuga, this age we're in, is the most fallen age, we also have the best help. And that is the holy name, the names of the Lord. If we chant them, that's all we need, If we can chant the holy names of the Lord, the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra in particular, it said, is very powerful in this age. That will really, really help us to remember Krishna. So, whilst we're here, whilst we're alive, we should have our attachment in the right place, become attached to the Lord so that our attachment to Him is there in the right place when we leave this world. So thank you everyone for coming and taking part in this discussion. We've got, I think, 1 or 2 minutes left before the curtains open as Gaur Arti. Does anyone have any comments or questions quickly? Any reflections? No? Okay. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of the evening. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Bhagavad Gita ki jai.
Jaya 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 Goa Chande Arati Koshoba Jana Vita Tavane Jagamana Loba Dakine Nitai Chand Bamega Dadara Nikate Ateta Shrini Vasa Chatradara Bosi Ache Gorachan Ratna Simhasane Arati Koren Bama Adi Devagane Sanjaya Mukunda Vasu Goshadigaya Shanka Bache Ganta Bache Bache Karatala Madhura Midanga Bache Paramasala Shanka Bache Ganta Bache Madhu 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 Bache Shanka Bache Ganta Bache Madhu 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 Bache Shanka Bache Ganta Bache Madhu 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 Bache Bahu Koti Chandrajini Vadana Ujvala Gala Deshe Vanamala Kore Jalamala Shiva Shukanada Preme Gada Gada Bhakti Vinoda Deke Goa Sampada Kiva Jaya Jaya Goa Chande Arati Koshoba Jana Vitatavane Jagamana Loba Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Namaste Sa Sarasvati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Dishata